Okay, boys, we're here. So I heard at May 12th, we gotta get a test server opening. And as usual, we had a test server a long time ago. And when we have a PTR server up, usually we just test out balancing stuff. How it usually went was for one or 2 weeks, what we usually do is we test out characters, the balance patches, etc. And it just comes out in the main server afterwards. This was last time's PTR balance stuff. This was January 6th, and it's been 4 months. I usually do the prediction on the left side, and then I write the changes on the right. We're going to start talking about some of the predictions here. So basically, at the moment, at the state of the game, it's always been Entropy versus Hitmaster, right? They've been always fighting about it, saying like Entropy's weak, Hitmaster's like strong, or like Entropy's harder, and like the back attacks like so stressful, etc. All these things people have been arguing about, and that's what most of the players are currently talking about right now. And there's also another thing called yearning. And yearning is kind of linked towards Entropy versus Hitmaster, is because yearning gives you about 12% movement speed and attack speed on top of whatever you have. So if you have a support, you're generally getting a 12% movement speed, attack speed, and that's pretty big. And if you go full spec, where generally specs impact damage, the amount of movement speed can be covered by yearning plus, like, let's say food, right? And then the regular food is 3.5%, and the event food is around 5%, right? So you're getting like 17-ish from there. So like most of the classes achieve, like some classes achieve max movement speed, like SLAYA, like Lostark is a new class. So those kind of things put into an account of the balance impacting a lot of the classes being very powerful compared to the other classes who really can't take advantage of that. Therefore, generally, full spec classes tend to be a little bit stronger due to the additional attributes being applied from outside, as in you don't need to allocate combat stats. With those putting in mind, and we have one more point in mind as well while looking into the prediction, is when you play on the end game, or when you play on, let's say, Broshaza, it's not always about the Trixie and DPS. Trixie and DPS means nothing in this game. If you link the class's power by Trixie and DPS, you can actually list them up by ranking, all right? Because Trixie and DPS is what? It's just a scarecrow that's standing still. The real thing that impacts the balance is, since the raid itself has cutscenes, the raid itself has DR, raid itself has bosses moving around, teleport, rotating, etc. So it is actually impossible, no matter how good you are, you can't do like a perfect play. What is important for us to understand is what defines a class OP is a class that is very easy to play, that has a lot of performance, and they've been always balancing based it off of that criteria. For example, the PTR balance long time ago, this is over here where the summoner was nerfed, like all that stuff, right? The nerf was based off of their easy version of the class, right? As in, if this class is too easy, and if the performance is too high, that's what they do for a nerf. And then they nerf further beyond. So this is an older version. There were additional nerfs afterwards. Another big change that they have done before in the past was they actually nerfed like the entropy synergy, right? But instead, everyone else got like a little bit more damage on top of it to offset it. In general, Smilegate, so most of you guys are like super worried, and I think you're more of a newer player if for those of you who are super worried about this balance patch season. Historically, Smilegate has never made a big change to a certain class to a point that like it dies. So it's always been nudges, and what happens when you get a couple of nudges, what happens is people gaslight the shit out of it, and then they get super angry, and then they bloat the shit out of the information. But generally, let's say 1% damage nerf, and they go like, oh, this class is completely dead, it's trash. Like, it's like, that is a bad mentality, that's a bad mindset to have, because that really doesn't do anything. Because generally, if you do it in a raid, that percentage is not going to be nothing, because most of the time, the MVP is based off of how strong the build is, as in like, you can't beat a higher eye level player. Plus, if you're in about the similar eye level, it's about how much you actually land your skills within a proper synergy and buffs applied, versus like how much you're not on the floor, as in not dead, as in on the floor without a space bar. You're on the floor for like 3 to 4 seconds. That's almost like half a cycle of a skill. You have to put those in mind before you're looking into some of the stuff. So based on that intro comment, we're gonna go into looking my general very basic prediction. I don't know, I don't want to make this video too long, so we'll just go about it right now. So let's get into it right away, man. So as for Gunlancer's standpoint, Gunlancer still has a problem of having a bash shackle, and the bash's range is really bad. The comment for like blue and the red in general, they're just like, they're kind of still in a position where they don't know what their identity is. For example, is our identity being a full support, or are we okay, or are we marked as a DPS? Then the reason why that's really difficult to find out is because the damage potential of the red, well, blue versus red, as some of you guys, most of you know, is not that different. And the reason why blue does more, because blue is easier to do DPS with. You can just stand still, just keep spamming skills while you have a big shield on. I think they're not gonna touch Gunlancer at all, but if they ever touch Gunlancer, I think it's going to be around the QOL area too. Again, as in an example could be like bash synergy uptime, or something like bash attack power. It got increased by 1 second last time, so maybe like bash attack uptime maybe +1 or something like that, or bash range, right? And also another problem for red and not blue Gunlancer, but for red in particular, is there's mana problems, right? And not that many in selection of skills. So maybe making this better. That's about it. And then the blue is like in a good spot. Gunlancers generally is chosen to make the raid go easier. They don't pick them for damage anyways. So either way, I'd be very surprised if they change a lot of stuff. So Destroyer Rage. So Rage is in a good spot. So I don't think they will touch him at all. I don't think they'll touch Destroyer at all, because Destroyer's in a good spot. They're really strong. They have good stagger, they have good utility, they have taunt if they want to use it. Their damage is actually pretty high, as long as you have the proper buffs and everything applied. So if they ever touch it, I am actually assuming they would do like a nudge of like 1 or 2%, either a buff or a nerf. But I'm actually thinking of like they might nerf him. Like there's not that many pool of destroyers. The performance of destroyer is actually really high compared to what the stagger kit and everything that brings it. But generally, I think they will not touch him. And going to destroy gravity, I actually don't know much about this class, and this is like even a smaller pool than Destroyer Rage, so this is probably like not gonna be touched at all. The character, the class itself, the playstyle, everything, it does feel kind of clunky, because if you transform and then you're just hitting it, and then if you miss half of it, you're losing a lot of DPS potential, and not a lot of bosses tend to stand still. So that's another problem too. BT is also in a good spot. I think DBT needs a little bit of shackle work. When I say by shackle, as in like QOL work, as in this particular class both relies on this skill called Red Dust. So if Smilegate decides to make this class easier, they would adjust Red Dust, right? So if they remove Red Dust and give that Red Dust damage to skill allocated everywhere else, that would make this class go tier like way high up in the tier. Mayhem is one of the best class in this game, and the reason why I think so is because the difficulty of this particular class was really hard when it was really squishy. But after the tankiness buff, you can play a lot more aggressive, and the new skills that they got, something like, you know, like overdrive, all these things together, what happens is this particular class is so easy to play and so easy to dish into the damage, and so easy to condense all the attacks together within a fit buff. It is really high up in this, and the reason why I think about it this way is when I bust people, or like when I play on the pugs and stuff, their performance tend to be like above average all the time. Considering like not a spec class, this would be one of the best not spec class in terms of damage and performance. That's why most people go Mayhem instead of BT. It's because like Mayhem seems to be more popular, therefore like they just change it around. But if they actually touch something like a QOL thing, it would be like Red Dust again, and then if they removed Red Dust, they would adjust like skills a little bit to make it even easier, like make Berserker even easier to play. That is really good for beginner players, and that can perform really well too. If that is the case, like Mayhem could be like the beginner friendly class, and then BT they would adjust it to a point that for like a high ceiling build. So Slayer Predator and Slayer Punisher. So Slayer is a really popular class. On chat, you guys go like, Slayer's definitely gonna get nerfed. Slayer's definitely gonna get nerfed. Like obviously those are the obvious stuff. You guys don't have Slayer yet, so I'm gonna talk it very briefly. The Predator version is basically you're spamming a skill, so it's like Mayhem. So like you're spamming a skill, and the more skills you land, the longer you can transform, and the longer you can transform, you can transfer back again really quickly. So her fundamental damage itself is really high, and if you do well with her, you can actually excel it. So her concept is unique. It doesn't fit into the actual raid as much, is because if you think about it, you transform, and what if the boss goes into a cutscene? You run out of your rage meter, and then you're kind of like stuck for not transforming for 8 to 12 seconds. That's kind of smudge, right? That's when your damage goes low. Besides that point, the Predator itself is really strong, and then the damage itself seems really high. But the Predator version of the Slayer, the Helmo and everything, like the regular runs and everything, it doesn't really need that much of a change. It has a unique playstyle, and I don't think players has reached to a point that to make it like OP or something. Like, it's consistent for sure, and it's in a good spot too. So they would actually not touch this. I would say not touch this at all, but since this is a new class, they would touch somewhere around like the QOL side, where how her engraving activates. It would be like a minor change or something like that. Now, a real fun part is the Slayer Punisher one. To be honest, this is going to be a nerf, and then the thing is, they don't have to worry about this being nerfed either, is because the Slayer's real benefit is the amount of stagger, the amount of destruction, the amount of potential movements, like a versatility, as in when I say versatility, it'll be movement speed. Does she have choices of movement skills? Like those kind of mobility versus the damage itself. It is super high. I call this DPS compression, right? As in, can you pull off the 100% of the cycle damage within how many seconds? So if you're a class that can dish out 100% of your damage within 9 seconds, or rather like even lower, or even one skill. Perfect example would be like, let's say Doomsday, right? You know, when you're going Ignition, you cast 2 Doomsdays. Like those 2 Doomsdays are big damage, and then you can land it within 16 seconds of the 3 bubble margin. Slayer is even faster than that. That's the thing, where Slayer's 100% or big portion of the hits are concentrated within 4 skills. Within those 4 skills, you can use it within 10 seconds or even 9 seconds, right? With the Adrophin on. So when you transform every time, she can dish out the maximum amount of damage with a few amount of skills, and the AoE of that skill is very large. So it's easy to land the hits and it's hard to miss, right? Therefore, when you say the nerf, I would say it's around 5 to 6. Plus identity meter related change. As in, you gain identity meter, you transform, you DPS within 16 seconds, and then you gather meter again, and then you transform again. That's like the repeat. It's exactly the same as the mage, but it's entropy class mage. There's a problem where if you have a lot of spec, you can transform within 1 cycle. You can transform within 1.5 cycles, you can transform within 6 seconds, etc. All these things. If you transform, your Z skills reset it. If you put that into an account, if you play perfectly, and if it's a Scarecrow, her scaling for these skills are very, very high, especially the Z skill. That's why everyone's saying Slayer's OP, because like she transforms really quickly without any issues. And she has a lot ways to transform. She really has like no shackles for it, unless she's except that she's a little bit slow. But when you're transformed, you're fast too. So when you do that, when you dish out that big damage, you don't have that much of a problem. That's like the main reason why Slayer's OP. Even with the nerfs and the identity meter related changes, she is still going to be one of the best class ever because of her kit. It's because of her fundamental creation of the kits are so well made and so smooth, and the animation and the AoE range, and then the potential DPS output that she can put out is so good to a point that even if she gets this kind of nerf, it's not going to impact it at all. So I'm kind of curious what the number is actually going to be, but that's like the obvious stuff. Paladin support. So support section, most of you guys are like, you know, which support's like all the best and stuff is. Support has like a really good, the rock, paper, scissors happening thing. For example, Paladin doesn't have super armor on Godsend Law, right? But, you know, Paladin still has something like a super armor in another place. Paladin also has like a holy aura that can give you additional defense. He has a targeted shield, right? And then both of his buffs are targeted. Therefore, Paladin is the most consistent, in which why they're often choosing Hell mode, because bards and artists require to place something on the floor and have them step on it, as in the artist is being the smallest. So the balance change for support, it's gonna be very, I'm either thinking of they're not gonna be changed at all, or if they're going to have something like a great support rework, which Smilegate actually never does big changes. That's why I don't really predict this, but if it was like one of those copium low, like a low chance prediction is, if they ever make something like a big change of supports, they would touch Yearning, and they would just adjust that based on the supports and stuff. As for support section, I would actually put NA on this. They're not gonna touch much on it. Support balancing looks really good right now, but their scaling is pretty bad. So maybe I add some scaling, etc., like as in growth, because you can't tell like if you're growing or not. Like if you can't tell if how strong your support's growing. Now, fighter. So fighter in general, I think this game is fighter is the most smudge group in terms of getting the love, because like some fighter classes are very, very strong in this game. However, they're the most outdated, if you ask me. And the best one here, the worst one here so far is, I think Soulfist is pretty smudge. I've been playing with a lot of Soulfist players. The EO and RB, both of them. These classes, like I don't play them enough, right? But from the looks of like, you know, my bus players, right? You know, Benji plays Soulfist. I don't know what his opinions are. Considering I play with, you know, both of these guys that have both RE and EO, their existence, their playstyle does not fit into the raids meta. For example, when you remember when we talked about Predator? So when you're transformed and it goes to a cutscene, you're kind of smudged out. Same thing. EO, when you're on hype 3, what if the guy goes into cutscene? It's funny because some people go like, oh, it's your skill for transforming when it's not at cutscene. Like, you can't do that every time. Like, I mean, that's also skill too, but if that is the difficulty of the class, if you play this class well, you should be rewarded. But it feels like if you play these two class well, you are average. That's the problem about this particular class. Even if you play perfectly, you are still about par of like what everyone does, and the difficulty that brings in is skyrocket, as in you need to find out how exactly when the cutscene goes in, when does he get DR at which line, all that stuff together. Even if you can cancel it, like that doesn't really help. Like canceling your identity, like you cancel it as soon as the cutscene starts, and then when it comes back, like what if it's not back up? Like those are kind of things. So since I don't know Soulfist too much, I would say they're in the remaster category, because like they usually choose remaster of one class per balance patch, and I'm just gonna mark it as if like they're gonna make a big change. Well, and the thing is, no one really plays Soulfists. That's the issue too. So that's that. So Wardancer, same thing. So Wardancer, the problem with Wardancer is first and 10 is too weak, and SO have too much shackles. I don't understand if this class is a damage class or a synergy buffing class, because her uptime of the rage and all that stuff is good, and she's very tanky as well, right? I was gonna say tunky, but tanky. So it's a very, very easy class for a newbie player to start with. So for example, if any of you guys are new players, first intent Wardancer, you can't actually go wrong with this class. And the reason being is she's very tanky. You're spamming only like 1 or 2 skills. Like if you rotate your skills, you're just auto attacking, right? You're walking around. Your cycle upon cycle upon cycle is very, very simple. Therefore, her damage is not as good, but people still used it because it wasn't as bad. But now that the damage requirement is getting higher and higher and higher, they do feel that like even if I play perfectly, I'm lacking DPS. Then what does people do? They kind of look it into their classes, right? For example, if I simplify this again, even if you play Wardancer perfectly, it is still not enough sometimes. So it's impossible to beat certain classes in terms of DPS. And when I say DPS, this shouldn't really matter for you guys, because this doesn't hinder your clear anyway, because what hinders the clear is you dying or not. And since Wardancers don't die enough, they give you great buffs to the whole team. They have their value that way. Therefore, well, I'm just gonna put adjustment into it, how skills operate, because like this is a very simple class. So if they're gonna leave this as a simple class, they just leave it that way, and they would just adjust DPS a little bit. But Wardancer SO is it's a pretty interesting topic actually. So Wardancer is one of the strongest class in the game. And then if you guys hear me say that, they go like, huh? Really? Yes, there's a build called the Force Spender Entropy. That build by far is one of the strongest in terms of DPS. But however, remember what we talked about this in the beginning, is if the monster or the boss stands still as a scarecrow, the rank is different, correct? So the Force Spender Wardancer is one of the highest when the monster stands still. For example, The reason why is if you guys have played Wardancer, if there are Wardancer users out there who are listening to this video, your tornado sucks, your explosion sucks. I have no idea what the other skills are operating. It's so slow, it never lands, never get a full tick, right? So therefore, what people do is they go to a realistic approach by going 3-spender hallucination, right? Because you're not doing all the back attacks and everything. But people who take it as a challenge, they do 4-spender and then they just break the ceiling with the DPS. Here's what I think is 4-spender, they have it there and then they have the big DPS for it. It's really good, but I don't think Smilegate is smart enough to know that the 4-spender thing is like a game breaker. And I think they solely believe not many people are playing that particular build because really skilled players play those builds. I can't play that build because I can't operate it, but they really don't balance based off of high tier players. Smilegate do not balance based on high tier players. They based on easy classes. For example, if you guys play League of Legends, if Garen is OP, they balance Garen, right? But if like a really hard champion, like let's say a Zerker or something, they never touch it because it only works in like challenger level or something like that. Easy class with doing big damage always gets nerfed, and that's SLAYA right now because SLAYA is super easy to play, super strong. Esoteric Wardancer 4-spender is a very tough class, but it does very high damage. So going back to this, then what is the conclusion? The conclusion is the Wardancer is going to get, I believe that is going to get a QOL change. For example, her wind explosion needs to be canceled, right? As in, she is the only class that can't cancel out of something. Therefore, she actually wipes parties because she can't cancel out of wind explosion. This might be one of the changes. This is like an example of a QOL change. When they get a QOL change, I think they're going to get a slight DPS nerf. But Wardancer is one of the classes that also needs like almost a close to a remaster around into a look into it. Striker SO, I have no idea. I've never seen this class. It's very, very rare. DB, same thing. Striker has a big problem. And the big problem of this particular class, and the reason why I think they're not going to touch it, is this. Striker, their image is really bad in Korea. And it's not because the class sucks. The users that play Striker, a big portion of the Striker players, they're all bad. They don't know how to play the game. They might be a bunch of old guys. Issue about Striker is they're known to be not doing any mechanics, dying all the time, and never land back attacks. That's the image in Korea. I don't know about NA, but that's the image in Korea. And if you see a Striker, you automatically assume that this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And this is because of the Lazaniev card. The Lazaniev card, they don't want to proc it. Therefore, they don't do mechanics because they don't want to proc their Lazaniev to do more damage. Because sometimes people do raids to compete with other DPS players to get MVP. If some people are having fun with that, I totally respect it. But if that makes the raid wipe, then I don't know what that would be. Continuing on from Wardancer and Striker and all that stuff, the problem about this particular thing is the Lazaniev card set. Maybe like they might change a thing that the Lazaniev version is going to be either removed or like adjusted based on the thing. But the Striker's problem is the character is easy enough, but the players make it go down a lot. So since the class itself is not that weak, Striker's a really strong class. They're just really good to pump it out. So, but if I was Smilegate, I would be thinking nothing about Striker. Like there's really nothing to touch. Because I don't know much about it because the user made it look all bad. So if there are some Striker players out there, apologize for not talking too much about it, but I just don't have enough information to give you. The perception of the particular class has been really bad, and then the engraving went down a lot and all that stuff. So when it turns to if both of them, if you have to buff them, maybe it would be SO because SO is not that popular. Or it's like the SO and the Deathblade kind of feels like a better version of SO or something. But sometimes the SO, the super swiftness version is good too. But that's how it usually works. Now Scrapper. That is a really long video, huh? So Scrapper Tai, same thing. Like I don't know why they would touch this, like these classes. Shock, same thing. Every time I see them, they're just good. As in, there's no problem with the classes. I guess Shock would have a little bit of complaint on, I guess, their short reach. The only problem I see with the Scrapper is short reach and a visual overhaul, I guess. Now, now, funny thing, Glaivier. Now, Glaivier has a lot of problems. Thing about this, chat, is when you want to buff, damage is not everything, chat. Damage is not a very important, like, damage is not the best thing in the world. It's like this class has a problem where you can't use engravings properly. Like, you know how Glavier's tripod gives you like 100% crit rate and all these things together? She can also use all-out attack as well. Like, Glaivier needs to have a focus, as in it's all over the place. For example, it's like a box of Lego that has spilled out, and then all the Lego pieces, one's made of plastic, one's made of metal, and one's made of wood. That's what Glaivier is, and it's telling you to make a roll, like a sculpture out of it, but you can't because the whole, like, the parts don't fit together. But what Glaivier player is doing right now is they kind of squish all those blocks together and cramp it in, and put it in a microwave or something to melt it, and then to make it into a shit ball. That's what Glaivier is, because it doesn't do that much damage in the first place. And the control version is, they think the control uptime is a lot more, but it's actually not that too. And then it's good. Glaivier wise is like a swiftness version. You hit it at the back. You have to hit the back the whole time too. A swiftness, the swiftness back attack classes are so smudged because not only it's hard to hit the back attack very, very long, you have to stay in the back for a while too. So that's why when everything is done perfectly, control does more damage particularly, because like when the boss stands still again, you land 100% of the back attack, right? But that's unrealistic. That's why Glaivier Pinnacle has a more realistic approach of having consistent DPS, and she has a parry, and she has all that stuff together. So I think she needs a lot of work, right? She needs a lot of work in terms of like, it doesn't need to be a buff. Like, it doesn't need to be a buff, but it needs to be at a certain point that this class needs an identity. It doesn't need to be a buff, but the build needs to be more concentrated. So it's technically a buff. You do get more damage because if engravings work better for you, that's a buff, chat, right? And in terms of operating the skill itself, like, what is she supposed to do? Is she supposed to just spam all the skills and all these things? Is she supposed to focus on like a parry, or like what is her purpose? What is their existing purpose? It doesn't have it. That's why most people don't want to play Glaivier, because it doesn't seem that good. So, and you know, I'm obviously not giving out the details because it makes it too long, but the theory of it is they will probably either get a, not like a remaster, but like adjustment to like a lot of cool buffs. If I say a class that is like a remaster standpoint, it would be something like a Soulfist, or maybe like a Glaivier. Maybe Memo could be happy. Maybe I could say that to make him happy a little bit. Striker is kind of in the list too, I guess, because like, you know, I'm probably have to talk to the Striker players, I guess, but they're cool. Yeah, so Gunslinger. We're going to the Hunters now. So Gunslinger is in a good spot. Gunslinger is one of the strongest Hitmaster classes out there, as long as the player is good. However, you know, the amount of tripods and all these things required are there. And you know, one thing is, I think Gunslinger is gonna get another QL adjustment, and the reason why I think is because I think the developer really likes Gunslingers, because last patch and everything, they just keep giving loves to a Gunslinger. I don't know why, but even if Gunslinger doesn't get any change, I wouldn't really care. But Gunslinger is in a good spot. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if she gets nerfed. I wouldn't be surprised if Gunslinger gets a slight nerf of like 1 or 2%. I wouldn't be surprised. Deadeye needs a little bit of help. This is a funny thing. Smilegate said Deadeye is one of the class that most DPS. That's what they said on their comments. And this is actually false, right? Deadeye doesn't do the most DPS as a back attack class. But they don't really use other than a shotgun either, right? And then the recent buff that they give, the stagger skill, right? The last request or something like that. So that one, it does bonus damage when they're staggered, right? Like, I mean, they're trying something. They're trying something out of Deadeye. And I think this is the time where you see what the big Deadeye change is going to be. I'm actually pretty confident that they're going to change something in Deadeye. They've been saying something that they will try something out, and they got 4 months to do it. I would say big, maybe like adjustment. adjustments for sure. Handgunner, no one really plays handgunner. I don't know why you would play handgunner in the first place. It's so weird. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Deadeye is so weird. It's like, why, I don't know why you would play handgunner when you can play EW. That's why they're gonna change it so that they're gonna give some handguns some more identity, and then Deadeye enhanced weapon some more identity as well, as in like what is their existence. A lot of the classes missing their existence. Like, why do they exist, right? And when it's not about, it's just not about damage. When you play them, what makes this class enjoyable, and why is the game blocking someone from that, right? Because if you think about it, why is Pinnacle Glaivier fun? Honestly, I didn't play Pinnacle Glaivier that much. Like, you only play it till like Vikis hard mode, right? Like almost a year ago. Glaivier is fun when you are like parrying. Like when you parry is really fun. You get to be very mobile. You get to like, you know, when you say a Monster Hunter, you play that spirit class, right? It's the same thing. Like, if that is the existence, like, why don't we just push that to a point where you should be rewarded for doing something that the class is existing for? For example, if the Deadeye is the highest risk, highest return, they need to be close, right? They need to be super close to do additional damage, and they're squishy. So if they're doing that, why can't they produce more damage though? Like, why would Deadeye ever use rifles, right? Like, as in, this is the stuff that Smilegate really needs to put in down. Of if this class's existing purpose is A, like, they need to make sure the environment matches it, or the actual build matches it. Artillerist FP is in a good spot too. Barrage is also in a good spot. So most people think that FP is really bad. Obviously, FP is worse than Barrage, that's for sure. But in terms of getting into doing the mechanics, like having more versatile skill placements, FP is one of a good hitmaster class that you can spam a lot of skills to. However, they're lacking a little bit of DPS, so they could be having like a DPS adjustment. And as for Artillerist Barrage, I'm pretty sure they're not gonna touch it, even though most people think that this class is really, really OP. But the past notes that the developer have said is, since they're stuck on the floor on a chair, they think that they're doing the enough damage that they think that they should have, right? I mean, that's what the developer said. Well, being stuck on the floor is actually pretty bad. For example, Barrage Artillerist is one of the worst class to prog with. And I'm pretty sure most of you guys understand why too, because how could you stand still when you don't know what when you don't know what's happening in the raid, right? So I'm assuming Smilegate thinks highly into that specific thing, and they adjusted accordingly. So Barrage Artillerist would not be touched at all, I think. So a lot of you guys think Scouter is very, very weak, right? So in the very beginning, in the introduction of this particular video, what did I say? So this game, you're playing a very, very easy class. They expect you to do less damage because the class is super simple. For example, your ceiling of a particular damage, you have to do well. If you don't do well, you're kind of like in a back and forth. Let me tell you the one reason why Scouter and Shadowhunter is used in busing. And the reason why is because there's no variables. They're very consistent. If we think that we need 100 million worth of DPS, we don't take Surgeblade. We actually take someone like Scouter, because what if Surgeblade doesn't crit the whole time? Or what if the Surgeblade misses, right? So within these two kind of consideration, Scouter and Shadowhunter tends to be one of a good consistent class that does consistent damage, that doesn't die. They're really welcomed in a proc party. This class is so easy and so easy to play, and their output is decent. However, for people who want to go above and beyond, they're stuck. So if Smilegate's goal is to make this class for newbies that can't go in high in terms of ceiling DPS, they're not going to touch anything. So even if this class feels weak, this class is weak, like whatever, like this class is garbage, like etc. whatever. I know, I understand that. I understand that you guys say that. But if that is the case, if that is the intention of Smilegate, as in saying this class is for newbies and you were supposed to do average damage, you're expected to do this much damage, and then that damage is enough to clear the raid, they're not going to touch it. And again, let me explain it to you again, because clearing a raid with any class, there's no problem. Clearing it faster is when more people want more damage, right? That's how it works. So for Scouter, obviously it would be like a buff, question mark, but I would not. I would not be surprised if they don't touch anything. It's a pretty rough thing. Like, I mean, I play a scout, I play Shadowhunter, but like, if this class is not touched, that's their intention. Hey, only newbies can play it, and you just want consistent DPS off of it. You can't go above and beyond for it. Cool. Now, the reason why I said this is because the next section is AT Scouter. This is why most of the people are talking about like, okay, then if this class is forever to be average, like average DPS, but very easy to play, very consistent, then how can I get more DPS? Like, how can I go above and beyond in terms of taking out the DPS? Well, you have another engraving. So you can invest into a different build to do more DPS, right? Therefore, maybe if that is the intention of that these Smilegates are doing, because they did say they want to make each engraving unique, right? And if that is the case, they would buff AT. That's what would be the thing, because if high ceiling build is AT and low ceiling build is Evolution Scouter, that works. That really does, because like if you want to be above and beyond and not be safe build, high risk, high return build, then you'll play AT, because AT is much faster and then it has much more risk. But AT Scouter itself is so dog shit actually because of the battery issue. AT has a battery issue. You can't even properly take a combat stat on them, and they don't even know what relic set that they're supposed to take, right? So they need like an adjustment to a point to have an identity. The reason why I'm saying identity a lot is because I really don't understand why some of these classes exist. Because if you play a game for a very long time and then play with a lot of people, it always goes into why play this when you can play that? Why play this when you can play that? For example, why play Reflux Sork when you can just play Aeromancer, right? Why would you play Ignition when you can play something like Punisher Slayer? Why play Taijutsu when you can play Predator? Okay? Something like that. Like, that's because all classes have a very unique purpose, but Smilegate's trying to like squish it to a point that they're all about the same, and the older classes get kicked out. And people who have spent a lot of money on the old classes, they get gatekept. Sharpshooter, DR, and LC. So Sharpshooter, I don't play as much, right? Obviously, I don't play Sharpshooter at all. We got some friends playing Sharpshooter, all that thing happening. But if you take a look at it, Sharpshooter, DR, Sharpshooter, LC, you know, they had a big rework, right? And then we were making fun of them like, oh, Sharpshooter's dead, all that stuff. But they did get a remaster. And all that stuff happened. And Sharpshooter seems to be... The LC point isn't a good spot, right? I heard LC point, the LC version of the proper build is really strong. It's like, it's in a good spot as a hitmaster class. It's easy to do, and then all that stuff happened to do. I mean, I can't really say too much about it because no one really plays Sharpshooter in Korea, right? Still, a lot of people quit Sharpshooter for that. The real adjustment that they would do is, I think, the DR section. This particular class that goes high crit, I don't know why this class is here, because you rotate 6 different skills while the identity is charging in a time. You have like 3 different shackles on top of each other, and the DPS itself that brings within it as a crit, the crit DPS, the value is just not there. For example, Claymore, someone said a good point. Claymore is head attack, right? I don't get that. And also, I'm pretty sure most of you who are playing Sharpshooter, they're playing because you like the Archer class. Does Sharpshooter really playing like Archer class? I think Loyal Companion kind of does, but Death Strike though, like you go back and forth, you go to the close, you go far away, you go close, you go far away, you go close, far away. And then do you get the benefit from that? More DPS, more etc. whatever? No, nothing. Like there's no benefit of playing Death Raid. So they need some kind of adjustment there. And if they do, I'd be expecting that. But the thing is, they had an adjustment last patch, so they might not be touched at all. Now, let's go to the mage section. The mage bard, same thing. So as a support, if a support's getting touched, all the support is going to get touched, because support is in a really good spot right now. So what I'm going to put in as an artist support is at the same thing. They're all in a very good spot. Each support have advantage and disadvantage positions on every raid, but you would still take every one of them and then adjust it accordingly, okay? So I'm not going to talk too much about support. Now, Summoner High and Summoner CO. So this one, the reason why Summoner Communication Overflow was nerfed is because it's so simple. Majority of the players can't do more DPS than Maridin, the AI. Like the AI does more DPS. AI has a higher accuracy than majority of the players that play this goddamn game. That is the reason why this particular class was nerfed, because it's so easy to do DPS and she was performing above average among all players. So that's why it was particularly nerfed. The high elemental, people were saying high elemental is OP, high elemental is OP, like the reason why they're OP is because they do a lot of damage, they have a lot of utility, which is stagger, destruction, etc. They're one of the best bus classes as well, and they're good at hell mode as well because they're just a simple caster that is easy to land things, and then you have the AI to help you to land things too. Like, so communication overflow is one of the best mage simple class that I would definitely recommend to all players, is because it's so easy to perform really well with. Which it goes into back into my standpoint is, if this class is strong and easy, why would you play, like, let's say a scouter, right? That's the problem about this game right now. For summoner, I think it would be like a slight nerf. That's what I would say, because summoner is still very strong, but they would actually not touch it either. If they don't get nerfed, it's fine, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get nerfed because their statistics is so high, because it's so easy to play. Ignition. So let me tell you something about Ignition. So there's a lot of Ignition players, and I don't understand why certain people think Ignition is hard, because you just need to land Doomsday. What if Sorg didn't get nerfed, but the Doomsday's land animation is 1 second longer, right? That's also a nerf, by the way, but like, is that worse or 3% nerf worse? It's like, that's like the question that the Smile game might kind of do. So if Doomsday lands 1 second slower, what would that be? You know what I mean? But it's so funny to me that people who are talking, let's say an invent, like talking about balance, you guys talk about balance, etc. You guys always talk about just damage. But the thing is, the kit and the amount, the animation, all these things are actually, they value a lot more than the damage itself. That's how I usually feel about it. If it's easier to hit, it's actually better. So if they get a damage buff, so think about it this way. Would you want a damage buff plus animation is longer? Or would you want a damage nerf with animation shorter? Meaning, if you get a 5% buff and the Doomsday lands 1 second slower versus 5% nerf with Doomsday landing 1 second shorter. See, like these are the thought process that you're supposed to have. And I think Smilegate's thought process of Ignition is they know where this particular class is supposed to be, and that's why they're not touching as much. Therefore, when you say nerf and buff kind of stuff, the reason why I said Summoner on the nerf section and Igniter on not is because of course they do a shit ton of damage. They do a shit ton of damage, but like, I think a lot of people just don't land their Doomsdays. That's what I really think. Maybe that's why they just don't touch it, because player base is the one that brings out the data, and Smilegate looks at data, right? And so they don't really take counters either. So they're just like a big DPS person that just does a thing. Igniter, they throw away all the shackles. They put all the shackles on. They just focus on just damage. That's like the thing that the Smilegate is trying to look into. So they either not going to touch it, or I would say they would put a slight nerf as well, I think. When I say slight, this is like 1 or 2. And you have Reflux, right? Igniter, again with my point on Scouter, Evolution, and then AT Scouter. Big damage, high risk, high return. Lower damage, easy to play, and consistent. Reflux, I have no idea. Reflux and Ignition right now is, why would you play Reflux when you can play Ignition? That's exactly what it is, because Reflux has no value. Again, as I say, if you're gonna play Reflux, why don't you just play Drizzle or Aeromancer? That's what it is. So that's why Reflux needs some sort of adjustment buff. Arcanist, Empress, and Emperor. So the problem about this Arcanist, Empress, and Emperor is, on a high level skilled players, you can't beat this class. This class is one of the best class in this game. But the problem is, not many people can pull off what other good players can pull off. I think that instead of the damage nerf, if they do a damage nerf, I wouldn't be surprised at the same time. Plus, they would have some sort of a QOL nerf, as in percentage of cards. This class does way too much damage. If you're actually lucky, plus are really good at the game, you can't beat this class in terms of DPS. Our Emperor is in a good spot too, because Emperor and Empress is in such a good balance. As in, like, Emperor, you're spamming all these skills, you're pulling all those cards as much as you can, and then you're using cards. Empress got so much better because you pull cards a lot slower, and you can choose cards at a much slower pace to control your battle a little bit. And because of that, you can focus on, like, you know, moving more, you're adjusting your position more, you're landing your skills more, and popping a lot more. And then when like, let's say a 4 card resets like 7 times, is big DPS, right? So those kind of playstyle is so fun. I would say it's so fun. And I bet the Arcana players, they really like playing that class. I can tell that for sure. And they enjoy playing it, and then because it's hard enough, and it provides you enough rewards for it. High risk, this is a perfect example of high risk, high return class. But the return is too high, therefore I wouldn't be surprised if there's a nerf on it. Same case for like an Emperor. Maybe even if there's a nerf on it, they would adjust it to a point that it's not that too heavy, as in terms of button pressing. Shadowhunter PS. So the problem about this particular class, I can write an essay for this. The problem is because this class uses mana and also identity gauge at the same time, and it's a back attack swift class, and it does do that much damage. Since that is the case, as someone who played this particular class for a very long time, it's going to get an adjustment for sure. If it doesn't, whatever, right? Because this class needs an adjustment where she has way too many shackles for the performance. For example, she had to land everything on the back attack. She has synergy skill that need to be activated like Red Dust, right? And she has both mana and identity gauge to worry about. So, and there's another problem where the identity gauge is like 1 pixel different. It still doesn't activate. So in a visual standpoint, you don't know if you have enough meter for your identity gauge skill. Either way, this is one of the funny class that, did you guys know that if you have a 9/7 stone in this class is actually weaker than the 5/3s and a 1. And the reason why, because her class engraving only impacts normal skills. It doesn't impact purple skills. And one of the decimate skill, the purple skill, has a big pie to it. So even if you have a 9/7 stone on a Shadowhunter perfect suppression, you're actually 1% weaker. This class is literally needs a little bit of adjustment or a remaster, because it's not shit, I would say. It just needs a lot of work. I would still play it. I have no problems playing it, but there's so much problem. She is very, very, very handicapped. Shadowhunter DI, same reason as Scouter, but I would not be surprised if they don't touch anything either, because their purpose is what? These two classes, it really feels like Smilegate kind of sounds like they want these guys to be the easiest class to play and be the most consistent with. And I'm not gonna lie, man, me playing Scouter EV and Shadowhunter, like increasing it up to like a certain point. I mean, I get to prog a raid with a fraction of a gold that people have used. So I made hella gold from them. And for busing classes, these guys are really good too. So I made a ton of gold from them because they're so easy to play and so easy to perform with. Therefore, if they give them some love, it'd be really good, actually. If they don't touch it, that's really what the developer said. And then that's why they have another adjustment of class engraving that they would put in to have a higher ceiling build. Okay, cool. Now, Reaper. So I do not play Reaper. I actually don't like Reaper players. I like the Reaper class. Reaper class is very unique, very moving around. I will never play Reaper because she moves too much. That's basically my honest opinion about Reaper. However, Reaper needs a little bit of adjustments too. I think Reaper is going to get like QOL buff. When I say it as in QOL buff, is this class, you guys don't know yet, but on Voldyke, the reason why this class gets gatekept is not because of damage. Like, you don't really gatekeep people because of damage these days. You gatekeep people because, one, they die, because you have to reset every time that they die. They have the highest death rate in all raids, right? They have the highest death rate in Voldyke right now. Every time I play for Reaper, they always die at least once. That's a problem. And that causes people to gatekeep Reapers, correct? Even though it's not the class's fault, it's the player's fault. People have a bad perception of Reapers. And I think that's very unfortunate. They really should not deserve that. Plus, I have another point why Reapers get gatekept all the time. Their utilities are, I have no idea what their utilities are. For example, if a Voldyke Reaper player, 1620 plus, have to switch to Thirst to clear a gate 4 or like gate 3, that's a serious problem. Like, as in, if you have to change your build to something else to clear a raid, that's a problem, Chad. And I hope Smilegate knows that. Like, I don't even play Reaper. I don't even like Reaper. But let's state the facts, right? As in, you guys don't play Voldyke. If you play Voldyke, you will realize Moon Reaper is almost impossible to play for Gate 4. And they always say that they give you like a solution to do so. Like, hey, use this skill, and use that skill. I don't know the exact combination, but apparently you have to save 3 different skills before the mechanic even starts. And then you use your identity in a certain way to actually do one person enough amount of stagger to hopefully pass that mechanic. In Gunlancer standpoint, that's one surge cannon. Like, it's so different. It shouldn't be this different. You know what I mean? Like, because you require a lot of destruction. You require a lot of stagger. You require a lot of like all these counters all at the same time. Moon Reaper, like, okay, so honestly, for those of you who are playing, right, I don't understand Moon Reaper about this Nightmare skill thing, right? It's so weird. Nightmare is a gauge builder for Moon Reaper, right? My question is why? Because Nightmare is one of the craziest, coolest, most fun skill ever for Reaper. Like, what if that was just adjusted as a utility skill, and with the damage or identity gauge missing, put it to somewhere else? You know what I mean? Then you can have a flashier play, easier play, and then the play is just going to be more enjoyable. That's what I think. I don't even play Reaper, but like, let's say you're dual wielding, just because you want to hold a two-handed sword, like, you can't cut your own arm off and try to hold a two-handed sword. You know, it's like I'm trying to, like, it's a bad take, but like, these guys are literally cutting their arms off and try to fight. Like, I don't understand why the class is built this way. And I wish there's just some form of adjustment to make this class feel more comfortable. Because Thirst is pretty comfortable too. Like, Thirst is like, you know, you just spam all the skills, go back attack, like you spend the red skill, you can use your Nightmare for counter, all these things. It kind of feels balanced, but like, this class is lacking a little bit of damage. Now, if you want a high risk, high real build, you go like super spec for it, then you just end up doing not as much stuff, and then you can't even do any mechanics. So what does that result into? Gatekeeping Reapers. I just want the Reaper players to be happy. I don't like them, but I want you guys to be happy. I don't like them because they die all the time, okay? But I'm not gonna lie about like what they need help with. Right? Okay, so let's end it with that. Deathblade, Surge, and RE. So Surge is also questionable. So Surge Blade is in a weird, like, to me, it's in a weird spot because everyone goes like one surge, one surge, one surge, one surge, right? One surge, one surge. Like, the thing about Surge Deathblade is you have to rotate Surge very, very often to keep up with everybody, as in, you know, getting the stacks up. So I have a lot of fun playing Surge, actually, getting the stacks up. Trick is to not force yourself to get 20 stacks. You can use your Surge at 18, 19, or even 17, and then use your Void Strike to fill it back up to transform to Surge mode again. It's a very fun class. It's a very unique class. It fits really well into this meta because if a boss goes into a cutscene or a DR, you can get your stack up, right? You can get your stack up, all that stuff, and then land your surge accordingly, and then you're good. So it really fits into the meta. It does that stuff. It gives you great synergy as back attack, front attack. People want Surge Blade because they want back attack, front attack synergy as well, correct? But I just don't know about this Surge thing. Like, as in, it seems to be that Surge is in a good spot to a point that it doesn't really need any change. Like, the only thing that I would complain about is the allocation of crit, as in, it's so stressful if your Surge don't crit, and you can't really get into you can't really go about how you're supposed to allocate crit to a point where you would do it consistently. Because I think the most fun in Surge Blade is you surge and you crit and you see big numbers. And if that big number is about the same as most classes do, I think it's, well, that's technically balanced, correct? Because like, it's up to you to think. If this build is gather stacks up doing big damage, they should focus on that and then adjust it accordingly. That what is bringing the shackles in, right? So yeah, that's about it. Like I don't know if Smile guys like think that way, but the Surge's identity is in a good spot, and it's a really fun class. And if the class is fun, like I don't know what the problem with that be is. Like if Smilegate asked me what would you change for Surge, I go like I don't know, maybe crit more. That's about it. That's about it. So that's why I would say NA. However, this build has a lot of problems. RE is like FI Wardancer. If you want this particular Deathblade class be a buffer, maybe RE is a choice. Like as in, think about it this way. Let's say Surge Blade is a damage version and RE is like the support version for it, right? The reason why RE is very difficult is because you have to land all your skills and your Surge at the back consistently to do the same DPS that Surge does, or a little more actually if you land everything, right? That's so difficult because, well, what are the skills that you would need to land? That you would need to land Surge, you would need to land Soul Observer, you need to land well, Moonlight Sonic's easy to land, and Moonlight Sonic's not even back attack. That's the funny part. And the Blitz Rush, all that stuff, you need to land all that 100% uptime, all that stuff. And that's just about the same as, well, let's talk about, well, I don't want to go about different classes, but it's mediocre, like mediocre to like a little higher than mediocre. So I don't know what the intention of this RE thing is, because long time ago, before the Surge, whatever it is, RE was more popular. The reason why RE was popular because Surge was a garbage engraving. Like Surge didn't do anything. No one knew how to use it. And then the Surge got a remaster, and then everyone moved on to Surge because it has such a fun, unique playstyle. And RE just stood there. As in, like, the RE fun version would be as you use skill search, you use skill search, you use skill search, you use skill search. It's high effort, but the reward is actually really small. So I would either say they would either like a buff, QL like a buff or adjustment plus like let's say either like a DPS adjustment, like a DPS buff or something. Because RE is too weak. I think it's too weak. Compared to the counterpoint of Surge. In terms of, when I say weak, it's not just damage. It's like weak in terms of performance of the class itself. It needs more of a rework, and it needs more of some form of like a help, some form of some love a little bit. Last category, specialist. I got artist here, and then the same thing for supports. All supports, same thing. If supports getting touched, all the supports gonna get touched. And right now, all supports are in good position, so I don't think they will touch supports at all, unless they do a big remaster, like a big readjustment of all supports. Aeromancer and Drizzle. So you guys don't have Aeromancer and Drizzle for a long time. Here's my opinion about Aeromancer in general. It is a very good newbie class. It is very good to do well with, and she is very strong. I don't know why people say Aeromancer is weak, but there's no reason for you to not play this class if you want to. And the reason being is the DPS of Drizzle is still very high. Pretty sure it's higher than Reflux. Don't take my word for it, but like I have seen Drizzle like pumps. It's easy to do DPS with Drizzle because everything is everything is like point and click, and all the skills are very quick to cast, and her stagger really good too, etc. And Rage Storm, same thing. She's very quick, and the AoE of the skill is very large, and the DPS and the crit that she brings is also good too. And at the same time, she's a crit synergy. So crit synergy is very welcome to the party. So that's also good too. But in terms of buffing or nerfing though, like Aeromancer, people say that Aeromancer is bad, Aeromancer is bad, Aeromancer is bad. I think Drizzle is in a good spot, because like if I say this, some like, let's say some Koreans will get super angry at me about it. But considering how easy this class is and how often they're performing really well, it seems like they're good enough. I don't play the class enough. But like every time I play with these players who play Drizzle, they have no problem getting all these good things. So I would be saying that over here. However, the Aeromancer, the Raid Storm version for it, I think they cut their arm off. So I think they need to saw the arm back on. They might need a little bit of love. She's a very easy class, but to a point, it went down too much. So it could be something like a slight buff. I wouldn't be surprised if Aeromancer gets a slight buff. So that's it, boys. This is an hour 20-minute thought process of me talking about that. So don't take this to an account. Don't take this seriously at all, because like that's how I think. I'm always wrong, but sometimes I'm right. I got most of the stuff right on the last balance patch, the January 6th one, but these days I'm actually not that confident on these balance patches, because I think this is a time where I kind of realized that not really that good at the game. So those are my thoughts, but like this was based off of the players I play with. I talked to them, they talk about their class, and based off of all the information I have, this is how I kind of feel about it. I don't care about the balance patch really. If the class gets buffed, whatever. If the class gets nerfed, whatever. None of the class is actually unplayable, because at the end of the day, if you live and if you don't die, all raids are very easily clearable, easily bustable as well. All classes are easily bustable. Even like you guys make fun of handgun all the time, but handgunner can bust too, like very easily, like because the DPS amount is actually not that very high. It's just that people want to clear raids faster. People want to be MVP more. Obviously, if you have a strong class, you gotta have a weak one too, correct? Like it's competitive. They can't all be the same. But since the variety comes from the player's aim skill itself, like how often they get hit, like how often they're on the floor, etc. All these things. If you put all that into an account, to me, the balance is so minuscule to a point that as long as you're just good, you have a good uptime, you can beat any class. So the point that I made for some of the classes is I want some of these classes to be loved in a point where if this particular class's job is being flashy player, for example, let's talk about Reaper again, right? The Reaper, like Nightmare is so cool, such a cool skill. Like what are they supposed to be? Reaper is like a ninja-ish style play. If that is going to be the case, like I want Smilegate to force that, like as in help that to make that play more valuable, more rewarding, instead of making them cut their limbs off and then try to do more DPS to catch up, right? That should not happen, because, and also for, again, like Ignition's a good example. Like Ignition, you're very slow, but as long as you hit your doomsdays, you see big numbers, and you're a big sorceress that casts like all these meteors, all these great skills that are a little bit slower, that can be very, very rewarding if you actually land them. And another one would be like a summoner communication overflow, right? You spawn all your monsters, and then you're actually like a summoner class, right? It's a summoner class. You summon your monsters, and then they do the damage for you, and then you're having an easier time moving around, doing mechanics, like that kind of stuff. Like if the purpose is that, they should focus on it, and instead of like trying to make all these nudges to make some outdated class be completely thrown out of the way. And then some of the stuff that are in a danger of being thrown out of the way is something like Shadowhunter, Perfect Suppression, and let's say like Handgunner. And then we also have like honestly Glaiviers in there too. We got something like First Intent Wardancer. We got both Soulfists, like those kind of stuff. We got Gravity Trainer, and then BT Berserker is good, but like it's still like out of the circle too, right? Those kind of things. Like if they really want to make each classes enjoyable to play and have their own unique thing, that's what the balance should technically be adjusted into, right? So cool. Alrighty guys, hope you guys enjoyed listening to this old man ranting about the balance patch, and I'll see you guys on the 12th. So when the 12th, the balance patch hits in, I'm gonna be turning it on live real quick. And since I have every single character, I will be going over them all with the changes and sharing you guys the information, what's gonna happen. Again, with that being said, that concludes the video, boys. Bye bye.